By the time the lobby lights warmed from night pale to morning gold, Tessa Rook had already walked her perimeter twice, checked the cameras 3 times, and made a quiet promise to herself that she would not let anyone steal her peace. The lobby of Brighthaven Sales Group was built to intimidate. Marble floors that looked like they had been polished by obedient ghosts. A reception desk shaped like a blade. Glass walls that reflected every insecurity a person carried inside. Most days, Tessa liked it. The building made people behave. She adjusted the collar of her uniform, scanned her badge, and watched the turnstiles blink green. Security was not a costume to her. It was a craft. It was focus, timing, and a willingness to be underestimated without letting it sink teeth into your skin. That last part was harder when Rylan Voss walked in. Rylan was an executive in sales strategy, which meant he wore confidence like a fragrance and assumed everyone else should be grateful to breathe it. His suit always looked expensive, even when he was in a foul mood. His smile looked practiced, even when he tried to make it casual. And his eyes always did that same flick to Tessa, like he was checking whether she still existed. He slowed at the desk and leaned in, as if the air near her had a better sound system. "Well, well," he said. "Tessa Rook, Eastbridge University. I recognize the stance. Still standing like you are about to break up a bar fight." Tessa kept her face neutral. "Good morning, Rylan." "Morning," he echoed, as if he was tasting the word and found it under-seasoned. His gaze slid to her nameplate. "Security guard. That is poetic." "It is employment," Tessa said. He laughed, short and bright. "I just remember your father, Officer Rook, the hero, the legend, the man who probably could smell trouble through a brick wall." Tessa felt the familiar pinch in her ribs. People always spoke about her father like he was a badge walking around without a body. Rylan continued, enjoying his own momentum. "Did you ever think maybe you would do more than watch doors? I mean, with your family legacy and all. You could not even live up to your dad ability of being a cop." There it was. The little knife. Tessa did not flinch. That was the trick. Do not give them a reaction, because reactions were the only things some people ever earned honestly. "I am not trying to be my father," she said. "I am trying to be useful." "Useful," Rylan repeated. "Sure, like a chair, or a stapler, very necessary." Tessa tilted her head. "You seem stressed. You should drink water. Sometimes dehydration makes people say strange things." Rylan blinked, offended that she did not bow beneath his commentary. "Just friendly advice," he said. "You know, from one Eastbridge alum to another." "Then consider this friendly advice back," Tessa replied. "If you want respect, you can try being respectable." His smile tightened. "Still feisty. That was always your thing." "My thing is keeping this building safe," Tessa said. He waved a dismissive hand and headed toward the elevators, shoes clicking like little speeches. As he left, he tossed one more line over his shoulder. "I hope your father is proud. He must be thrilled you are guarding the fancy vases." Tessa waited until the elevator doors closed. Then she exhaled slowly, like she was letting out steam without letting anyone see the kettle. She looked around the lobby. The cameras were steady, the entry logs were clean, the visitor schedule was routine. The building, for the moment, was calm. And Tessa was proud. Not because the job was glamorous, but because it was hers. She earned her position through certifications, training drills, and long nights studying protocols when others slept. She earned her pay through vigilance, restraint, and a calm that did not crack under pressure. She earned fulfillment through the simple knowledge that when people walked in, they expected safety, and she provided it. Some people thought security was a downgrade. Tessa knew it was a front line. She checked the monitors again. A delivery cart moved through a side corridor. An employee badge blinked at a restricted door and turned away. A maintenance crew rolled a ladder toward the west wing. Everything ordinary, which was exactly what Trouble loved to wear. Tessa sipped her coffee, eyes on the screens, and told herself the same thing she told herself every shift. Let them mock, let them underestimate. It made the moment of surprise so much sweeter. The building changed its mood without warning, like a smile that dropped off a face. Tessa noticed it in small details. The delivery cart moved too quickly. The maintenance crew did not talk to each other, not even with the bored irritation that most crews carried. A badge scan at a stairwell door pinged twice, as if the person scanning it had shaky hands. She zoomed a camera feed and leaned closer. Two men in gray coveralls were pushing the cart, but their posture was wrong. They moved like they were trying to look casual, which never worked. Real workers moved like they had earned the right to be annoyed. Tessa tapped her radio once, then spoke softly. Front desk to roving. Check west corridor near loading access. Keep it discreet. A calm voice replied. Copy. Tessa shifted to another screen. A third coverall figure stood by an emergency exit, facing the door, not the hallway. Like a guard. Like a lookout. Her stomach tightened, not with panic, but with certainty. She did not stand up dramatically. She did not announce anything. She did what she was trained to do. She gathered facts, locked down options, and kept her breathing steady. She pulled up the access control log. The restricted door near the finance suite had just been scanned open. That door required a high-tier code. Tessa frowned and clicked for details. User, Rylan Voss. She stared at the screen. Then she looked up at the camera feed near the elevator bank. Rylan was not in the hallway. He was nowhere in view. His schedule showed he had a meeting in the top-floor conference room, supposedly already in progress. So why was his code opening a restricted door on a different level? Tessa felt a cold clarity settle in. Either Rylan was making a very stupid choice, or someone was wearing his access like a borrowed coat. Either way, the building was about to learn what security actually meant. She opened the emergency protocol panel and initiated a silent containment sequence. Doors in the West Wing locked. Elevators restricted to executive floors and lobby only. Stairwell doors switched to badge only. Alarms stayed silent for now. Next, she activated the covert alert system that notified local authorities without setting off a public scene. Her fingers moved quickly, familiar with the steps. Location? Brighthaven Sales Group. Threat? Probable robbery in progress. Suspects? 3, possibly more. Status? Facility containment initiated. She sent it and returned to the cameras. The men with the cart stopped at a glass door leading to the finance suite. One of them pulled a tool from his pocket and began working on the lock, impatient and clumsy. Another glanced around. The third coverall figure at the emergency exit lifted a phone and typed. Tessa muted her microphone and spoke into her radio again. Roving, do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. Keep eyes. Lockdown active. Copy, Roving said, voice suddenly tighter. Tessa switched to a camera above the finance suite and zoomed. She caught a glimpse inside through the glass. 2 employees were still at their desks, unaware. One wore headphones. The other sipped from a mug like the world was safe. Tessa did not like collateral. She used the building intercom, but not for the whole lobby. She targeted only the finance suite speakers. Her voice came through calm and smooth. Attention finance team. Please relocate to the break room immediately for an unscheduled safety drill. Leave belongings. Move now. The employee with the mug froze, confused. The headphone wearer looked up. Tessa repeated, slightly firmer, still controlled. Move now. They stood and hurried out of view. Good. Outside the glass door, the coverall man cursed quietly. The lock did not give. He tried a badge. The scanner blinked red. He tried again. Red. Tessa watched his shoulders tense. The ordinary mask slipped. He lifted a radio of his own and spoke. Code not working. Door is locked. Another voice crackled back, muffled, irritated. Use the executive access. We are using it, the man snapped. Tessa leaned back in her chair, letting herself feel a single second of grim satisfaction. Containment worked. She watched the corridor cameras as the men turned, suddenly unsure, and began pushing the cart back the way they came. That was when the emergency exit lookout tried the door. It did not open. He tried again, harder. Nothing. He pulled on it with both hands and then looked down at the crash bar like it had betrayed him personally. Tessa allowed herself one small smile. Let them realize the building belonged to her now. Then she watched the elevator panel. A restricted elevator call lit up. Someone was trying to leave from an executive floor. Tessa pulled up the camera for the top floor, and there was Rylan Voss, standing in the hallway outside the conference room, staring at his phone like it had just grown teeth. He looked furious. He looked afraid. And he looked, for once, like a man who had run out of jokes. The containment net tightened as smoothly as a closing fist. Tessa tracked the suspects through the corridors, watching them pivot from confidence to confusion. They had planned for human laziness, not trained vigilance. They had planned for doors that stayed politely open, not a security system that could turn the building into a maze. The coverall crew split up. One shoved the cart into a storage nook. Another tried a stairwell door, badge held up like an offering. Red light. The third stood still for a moment, head turning as if he could hear the building thinking. In the top floor hallway, Rylan Voss stabbed at his phone screen. He tried an elevator. The panel refused him. He tried a stairwell. Locked. He turned and saw the camera dome in the corner. For an instant he stared straight into it, like he could bully a lens. Tessa clicked the audio feed for that hallway. She heard his breath, sharp and shallow. He muttered, "What is this? What did she do?" She did not answer him. Not yet. She switched to the lobby camera. Employees were still arriving, still smiling, still carrying pastries like there was no threat in the air. Tessa kept the main entrance normal for now. She could not trap innocent people inside. She was containment, not a prison warden. Her radio buzzed. Roving security whispered, "I see them. 3 suspects near west stairwell. They are agitated. One has a bag." "Hold position," Tessa said. "Authorities are en route. Do not escalate." She watched the suspects try door after door. Finally, one pulled something from his belt. It glinted. A knife. Not ideal. Tessa swallowed once and forced her hands to remain steady. She opened the remote speaker for that corridor, keeping her voice calm, almost bored. "Gentlemen," she said. All 3 froze. One snapped, "Who is that?" "The building security supervisor," Tessa replied. "You are currently in a restricted zone. You are also on camera from multiple angles. Your exits are sealed. You can choose to sit down and wait peacefully, or you can keep improvising and make your day worse." They looked around, suddenly aware of every camera eye. One tried to sound tough. "Open the door." Tessa paused, like she was considering it. "No." The knife holder took a step forward, anger rising. "You think you are a cop?" "I think I am paid to stop problems," Tessa said. "Also, I do not need to be a cop to know that trespassing with a weapon is a bad career move." Another suspect hissed, "We have an executive code." "That is cute," Tessa replied. "It is also useless now." They began arguing among themselves. Their plan was fraying, threads snapping with every second. On the top floor, Rylan continued his frantic pacing. Tessa watched him grab a passing employee, whisper urgently, then shove past them when they did not immediately solve his problem. He looked less like an executive and more like a trapped animal in a tailored suit. Tessa opened a line to the top floor speaker, careful and controlled. "Mr. Voss." Rylan jerked and spun, searching for the source. "Who is that?" "You know who it is," Tessa said. His voice rose. "What did you do? Why are the doors locked?" "Because someone used your access to open restricted areas," Tessa answered. "I assumed you would prefer the building not be emptied into a criminal's pocket." He scoffed, but it cracked. "My access is secure." Tessa let silence hang for a beat. "Then you should not mind an investigation." He went quiet. She continued, voice like a velvet hammer. "Where is your phone right now, Mr. Voss?" In my hand, he snapped. Then I recommend you check whether your access token is mirrored, Tessa said. And I recommend you stop yelling at cameras. It makes you look guilty. He stared at his phone again, fingers trembling as he tapped. Tessa watched his face drain of color. He whispered, "No, no, no." Tessa did not gloat. Not yet. Revenge was best served with evidence, not emotion. Her radio buzzed again. "We hear sirens outside," Roving reported. "Good." Tessa shifted to the exterior cameras. Patrol cars pulled up at the loading dock side, lights flashing but not screaming. Officers moved with purpose, weapons ready, but disciplined. She exhaled slowly. Her father used to say that discipline was the difference between bravery and chaos. Tessa opened the secure channel to the responding team and transmitted the live camera map, suspect locations, and locked door status. She spoke clearly, no drama, just information. The officers advanced through controlled access points. Inside the west corridor, the suspects realized what the sirens meant. Panic hit them like a slap. One bolted toward the emergency exit again, hammering the bar. Locked. The knife holder snarled and kicked the door, then turned and ran down the corridor, only to find a security gate had dropped across the hall like a metal curtain. They were caught. Tessa leaned back, eyes steady. And then she saw it. A fourth figure, not in coveralls, slipping through a side stairwell door on the third floor. They wore business attire. They moved like they belonged. They moved like they had a key. Tessa zoomed in. The face came into focus. Rylan Voss. He had found a way down, and he was heading toward the finance suite, fast. Tessa felt anger flare, hot and sharp, but she did not let it steer. She locked the third-floor stairwell door behind Rylan with a click on her control panel, sealing the route he used. He spun and yanked at it, then slammed his fist against the glass. Tessa spoke through the corridor speaker, voice calm enough to make his panic look louder. "Mr. Voss," she said, "stop." He glared at the camera and shouted, "Open this door. You cannot trap me." "I can," Tessa replied. "And I did." "You are overstepping," he snapped. "You are a security guard." "And you are a man whose code is being used for a robbery," Tessa said. "We both have titles. Only one of us is doing the job." He set his jaw, eyes darting. His confidence tried to crawl back onto his face like a familiar mask. "This is not on me. Someone stole my credentials." "Then you should be eager to cooperate," Tessa answered. He spat the next words like poison. "You think this makes you important. You are still Officer Rook's daughter playing pretend." Tessa smiled, small and dangerous. "You keep bringing up my father like he is your shield. That is interesting." Rylan went still. Tessa continued, voice smooth. "Most people mock what they fear, and you fear accountability." He took a slow breath. "You do not know what you are talking about." "Oh, I know enough," Tessa said. "I know your access was used. I know you were not in your meeting. I know you are currently wandering the building while an active crime is unfolding, and you chose to run toward the finance suite, not toward safety." His eyes flicked away. Tessa said, "Explain that." He did not, because he could not. Outside, officers were moving in. Tessa watched them close in on the coverall crew. One suspect raised his hands. Another tried to run and was tackled. The knife clattered to the floor, harmless now. Tessa allowed herself one breath of relief, then refocused on the real target. Because the robbery was loud, but the inside job was quiet. Quiet jobs needed quiet minds. Rylan was still trapped between doors, pacing like a wolf behind glass. He tried to call someone. Tessa saw his mouth moving, heard fragments through the audio feed. "Where are you?" "Answer. This is going wrong." The call went unanswered. Tessa opened the access log again and scanned for patterns. There it was. A series of attempts to enter restricted zones over the last few days, all using Rylan code at odd intervals, always when he would be in meetings or off-site visits. A slow rehearsal. Someone had tested the locks. Someone had learned her routines. Someone thought she would never notice. Tessa forwarded the log to the responding officer in charge, along with the live feed of Rylan movements. She also sent the camera footage from the top floor corridor, the one where he muttered, "What did she do?" It was not proof, but it was a scent trail. Then she did something small, petty, and deeply satisfying. She opened the lobby speaker to the executive elevator bank and made an announcement only that floor would hear. "Attention," Tessa said. "Executive access is temporarily restricted due to an ongoing security incident. If you are an executive currently attempting to flee, I recommend you remain still and reconsider your life choices." Ryland stared at the ceiling speaker like it had insulted his ancestors. The humiliation hit him like a gust. His face reddened. Tessa kept her expression neutral as she watched him stew. Revenge was not always a punch. Sometimes it was letting someone hear themselves, amplified. A moment later, two officers entered the third-floor corridor from a controlled stairwell access point. They approached Rylan with professional caution. One officer spoke. "Sir, hands where we can see them." Rylan lifted his hands quickly, too quickly. "Thank God. This is a misunderstanding. I am an executive here." "Name," the officer said. "Rylan Voss," he replied, chin lifted, like the name was a passport. The officer glanced at his tablet, then back at Rylan. "Mr. Voss, we need to ask you some questions about your access credentials." Rylan laughed nervously. "Of course. I already said my credentials were stolen." The officer did not smile. "We will verify that." Rylan turned his head slightly, eyes cutting toward the camera again, toward Tessa. His gaze burned with resentment and something else. Fear. Tessa spoke softly through the corridor speaker, just loud enough for him to hear. "I hope your father is proud," she said, repeating his earlier insult back to him, but changing the meaning. "He would be proud I did not let arrogance walk out with the money." Rylan flinched. The officer frowned. "Who is speaking?" Tessa switched to the secure law enforcement channel. "This is Tessa Rook, on-site security. I have full logs and footage. I will provide everything." The officer nodded, understanding. As they escorted Rylan toward the stairwell, he tried one last jab, desperate to regain control. "You are nothing," he hissed. "You will always be nothing." Tessa watched him go, and her voice remained even. "Then it should be very easy for you to lose to me," she said. The building felt quieter after that. Not safe yet, but closer. Because now the robbery was stopped, and the real story was beginning. The aftermath of a crisis always looked plain from the outside. A few officers leaving, a few employees whispering, a few executives pretending they had been calm all along. Inside the security office, it looked like truth. Tessa sat with the lead investigator and walked through the logs, the video feeds, the access trails. She did not dramatize. She did not embellish. She simply laid out the spine of events, bone by bone, until the shape of the inside job stood up on its own. The coverall crew, caught and separated, confessed quickly. They were paid to come in, grab portable assets from finance storage, and vanish. They were told the building would be sleepy, that security would be distracted, that an executive credential would open everything. That part made the investigator raise a brow. They assumed an executive credential would bypass all fail-safes. Tessa nodded. They did not expect real containment protocols. The investigator asked, "Who gave them the credential?" Tessa slid the access report forward. The credential used was assigned to Mr. Voss. The attempts began days ago. Someone tested entry points repeatedly using his code. It matches a rehearsal pattern. The investigator leaned in. "Does that mean he gave it willingly?" "It means his code was used," Tessa said. "And he lied about his location during the incident." She provided the footage. Rylan pacing the top floor, his angry phone call, his choice to move toward restricted zones during lockdown. She provided another clip from a quiet corner camera. Earlier that week, Rylan meeting a contractor near the service elevator, exchanging a slim envelope, glancing around like a man who thought cameras were decorative. Tessa did not smile. She did not need to. The evidence smiled for her. By the time the sun shifted to late afternoon brightness, Brighthaven Sales Group had an entire floor murmuring like a beehive. Rumors were fast. Truth was slower, but it carried weight. Rylan Voss was not escorted out in handcuffs that day, but he was escorted out. Two officers walked him past the lobby, past the marble and glass, past the same desk where he had mocked her earlier. Tessa stood tall, hands behind her back, expression calm. Rylan did not look at her at first. He kept his chin up, trying to wear dignity like armor. But as he neared the turnstiles, something in him cracked. He turned, eyes sharp, and hissed low enough that only she could hear. "You did this." Tessa tilted her head slightly. "No, you did this." His mouth tightened. "You were waiting for a chance. You wanted revenge." Tessa allowed herself a small, precise smile. "I wanted my workplace safe. I wanted my team alive. I wanted my job done correctly." His eyes narrowed. "And the part where you enjoyed it." Tessa leaned forward just a fraction, voice soft and clear. "I enjoyed you learning that I am not the person you decided I was." Rylan stared at her. For the first time, he looked at her like she was real. He swallowed. "You are just security." Tessa replied, "Security is the reason you are still breathing." The officer urged him forward. Rylan walked out, shoulders stiff, the lobby doors opening for him like a final insult. Outside, the world waited with consequences. Later, when the building returned to its normal hum, Tessa received a call to the executive admin office. Not a punishment meeting, not a complaint, a recognition meeting, which felt strange enough that she kept checking for hidden cameras. The interim operations director, a short woman named Juno Pike with eyes like sharpened pencils, gestured for Tessa to sit. "I reviewed the incident report," Juno said. "You prevented loss, prevented injuries, and preserved evidence for prosecution." Tessa nodded. "That is the job." Juno studied her. "You also did it without theatrical chaos. No panic, no bravado." Tessa said, "Bravado is expensive." A hint of a smile touched Juno's mouth. "I like you." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was an updated title, Security Operations Lead. Along with it, a raise, a training budget, and authority to overhaul protocols that had been ignored for years. Tessa read it once, then again, making sure it was not a prank. Juno tapped the folder. "You built a cage in minutes and caught the problem inside it. That is not guarding fancy vases. That is protecting an entire company." Tessa felt a quiet warmth bloom in her chest. Not pride like fireworks. Pride like a steady flame. She stood, folder in hand, and thanked Juno. As she walked back to the lobby, she passed the marble floors and glass walls that reflected her uniform. She looked the same as she had that morning, but the building felt different. It had learned her value. And somewhere beyond the glass doors, Rylan Voss was learning something else. That mocking a woman who is trained to watch patterns is a terrible way to keep secrets. Tessa returned to her post, eyes on the cameras, calm in her bones. Let them underestimate. She had proof now that it was never a weakness. It was leverage.